Before agreeing to read tonight to tell the story of a different planet's apocalypse, and because I've had this novel floating in my head for a while, and then as I was writing it didn't really fit in the short story context, so it got altered a little bit. Anyways, it'll make sense later, I promise. So, these are all going to be depressing, you realize that, right? Okay. Alright.
I think they'll be hilarious.
After months of trying to forestall the inevitable, we had very little warning of the colony's destruction. The council debated the merits of an evacuation order. The few who made it off in time would be first to be killed by the assailants that already surrounded Malakeen. The rest would die quickly. Was there a need to plunge the population into sheer panic for our last few hours of life? The Queen silenced the arguments. The people understood the thread we walked, she said, how little hope we had against the blockade that poisoned the lifeblood of the colony, ruining our food stocks and aborting our unborn children. They deserved the truth and the dignity of preparing themselves to face death. She recorded the message herself with the honest, unapologetic grace that characterized her rule. The Shinari have not been kept from their murderous intent, she enunciated clearly, dark anger apparent in her voice. Those who can evacuate should follow our fighters as they confront our assailants directly. This is the best chance to escape your council can offer in these circumstances. The encoded message that followed contained the coordinates for the doomed assault against the far superior power. There was no time to mourn for my own life. I could not be ungrateful besides. No history book in the universe would remember or herald the last princess of the Malakeen, but it was a title I had been honored to possess. I only regretted that I would not see my visit. A contingent of our fighters had left months ago to rally allies to our defense from the surrounding colonies, including his. It was a small hope, we knew. Of the populations closest to us, all had fallen to the Shinari. And as days since their departure lengthened into weeks, and still no word, our hopes dwindled. I was not, however, left in peace with my mournful contemplations. Amidst the chaos of the hurried evacuation, I looked up and saw the Queen bear down on me, determination in her eyes and fierceness in her brow, undaunted by the hopelessness of our situation. "Get up, child," she demanded, and took off, expecting me to follow. I assumed she meant to send me on an alternative evacuation path, but she descended into the depths of the castle, into the tunnels. She stopped at the birthing chambers. The Queen was not given to great displays of affection or warmth, but as she stood in these rooms, the final resting place of our beloved children who would not hatch, I saw her stern demeanor falter. It was a brief moment, so that when it was over, I wondered if I had imagined it. "You are to be the next queen," she said suddenly. Her words were low, but I could not question their meaning. I did not believe her. The ground shook with our impending destruction, the walls threatening to collapse upon us. She spoke of a future that did not exist, I was certain. She turned to meet my bewildered gaze. "Listen now, child. Within your womb are the genetics of all the future children. Where I have failed, you will succeed." Without warning, she transmitted the ancestral codes into my cortex, a massive weight that left my head spinning and burning. I gasped for breath and recovery. For how long, I do not know. "Fezzik will find you. I have foreseen it," I heard her say, through the haze of my ringing ears. "There are so few voices left in this corner of the world, but one remains. It is faint, but strong." Her eyes unfocused, as if hearing from some far-off voice now. I heard it whispered that our queen possessed the ancient power of distant sight, but I had no evidence of it till now. I was uncertain if I believed her anyways. And I was angry at her delusion. Why could she not just let me die in peace like the rest of my kin? For I sensed her purpose was greater than to fill me with empty words and useless codes. She meant to assign me to some fool's mission, I was certain. Seconds later, my assumption was confirmed, as coordinates for my escape suddenly filled my mind. With them came an imperative stronger than I had ever felt. I could no more disobey her order than I could deny myself breath. And I struggled to do both, for suddenly I was keenly aware of every dying voice in the colony, each one sharpening into a unique tone within our orchestral fabric of life, only to fall off key into a discord of despair. Our fighters fell, a tangle of broken wings. Many of my sisters were trapped below, unable to escape, as poison fell on our heads. The Queen I saw on the colony surface again, relaying dozens of commands in rapid succession, her back arched in a grateful and defiant dance. I longed to fight beside her. But I flew away, as was her wish, in the opposite direction of all my kin. The Shinari did not notice my solo flight, but that did not give me the relief from the oppressive veil of their deadly toxin. I could feel the foreign substance scraping against the wings, felt it throbbing in my abdomen, but still I flew on, until I was scarcely aware of the direction or the distance or my surroundings, or how much of my journey remained. I do not know the time that passed, but eventually the Queen's imperative weakened and then lifted from me entirely. I should have wept for the relief of it, but I wasn't sure if I had arrived or its source had merely winked out of existence. I sought shelter, but with no energy left, fell to a stumbling halt. I could not feel north. I could not hear the voices of my kindred. I was all alone. A solitary voice roused me sometime later. It was familiar, my struggling consciousness determined, familiar and comforting, though it despaired. There was no one left, my pheasant cried. Our people, yours and mine, all have perished. My instinct was to comfort him, but I had no energy. The new awareness in my cortex hummed happily next to him, as if fulfilled prophecy was food enough to live. But we would live, I realized. I could not hear the voices of my kindred, but I intimately understood how new voices should blend into a melody of a perfect and bustling colony of my own. We would seek other survivors. We would breed a new fighting force, stronger and more effective than all those that preceded it. The Queen had been working on a new code, I realized, as my cortex analyzed the reams of genetic strings coursing through it. The formula therein contained a means to fight against the Shinari. We will start anew, I promised aloud, my voice fluttering but gaining strength. My sons would reap my vengeance. Case number 16312 reached her, spoke into the recorder she held in her gloved hand, and glanced around the valley for other signs of life. The symptoms here are the same as the other colonies. I have just found the Queen, dead next to the abandoned brood. She stopped and lifted the useless veil from her face. It was difficult to maintain a scientific difference in the face of such unexplained destruction. I fear for the planet's future, she said in the recorder again, allowing herself an indulgent moment of editorializing comment. I do not know how we will survive if these disappearances continue. She sighed and pulled a magnifying glass from her bag for a closer look. So much is dependent on the honeybees, she muttered.